So let's go ahead, and I think we are live now. I'm Matt Storms. I am not hosting today. I am handing it over to Kevin. Kevin, why don't you go ahead and rock it out, dude?
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Matt. I am Kevin Mullett, and I am going to be your guide today for Helpdesk Hangout number 109. This is where we talk about things that are relevant to webmasters, search engine optimized professionals, and so forth. So we are going to be looking to answer your questions and talk about what happened over the last week. A couple of housekeeping items. We do ask that you go ahead and mute yourself if you're not currently active and speaking so that we don't get a bunch of feedback and noise. We also ask that if you are going to participate that you have a webcam and at least a speaker, microphone, so that we can hear your questions. And like I said, if you drop your questions in the chat, we will try and get to those as we go. So, as we normally do, let's go through and let's have each person tell us, not your life story, but introduce yourself and say who you're with. So let's start with Sash.
Hi, I'm Sash. I still don't know what I am. I'm a disaster recovery specialist. I'm the guy who cleans up after SEOs have gone and ruined things for large businesses. That's it.
Inconceivable that that happens, but okay. William?
He's a mountaineer from Switzerland, eh?
William?
You're
Hello?
muted.
You're muted, dude. Okay, until he... There he goes.
Yeah, I had a whole thing going on, man. I had a whole black hat thing. I mean, you saw me tilt to the hat, the whole thing, guys. I was going black hat today. It is what Matt Cutts just announced not too long ago. So, it's happy.
So hold on. So you've got Josh
Introduction.
Perkinski pretending to be a plumber and you pretending to be Josh Perkinski. Have I got that right?
I did, Sash. I went from a plumber to a black hat.
Okay, so do it one more time real quick, William. Introduce yourself. Go.
I'm William Rock. I'm the geek of the show. Sorry.
Okay, there we go. And I see that we have Michael. Michael, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, it's Michael Klein. I'm back, and I am an SEO analyst with BeFound Online in Chicago.
Look who's back in town. All right, Josh, go ahead. Hit it, man.
Hi, my name is Josh Bashinsky. I am an SEO and ethicist and all-around sarcastic Weisenhammer.
So you switched profession since a couple of times ago. You were a plumber.
Yes.
Now you're admitting that you're an SEO. Interesting.
Yes, I'm confessing. I'm confessing that I'm an SEO. I admit it publicly. Okay. I do search engine optimization. So I'm saying a bad word these days, I know, but...
There's hope for you yet. We'll work on that in a minute. And I see that the distinguished gentleman, John Mueller, has joined us. John, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm John. I'm a Webmaster Trends Analyst at Google in Switzerland. I also help to optimize search engines.
Yes, you do, John, and we appreciate it. And for those of you that needed John to introduce himself, you need to come back to Helpdesk Hangout more often. So today, we have a bunch of things.
One other thing, let's see. I would love to point out Josh's shirt. Josh, I want that shirt.
Speak, Josh, so we can see it here.
I cry because others are stupid.
Seems fair enough.
Big Bang Theory, of course.
Yes, and I see that we just had Don jump in. So, Don, if you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Can you hear me?
We can.
I'm Don Helbert from Inbound Marketing Group out of Victoria, operating out of sunny today, Costa Rica.
Awesome. Shame. What a shame to be there. And my name is Kevin Mullett. Again, I will be your host today. I want to give a shout out to Matt and Sasha's, the creators and the people that started this whole thing. I work with MarketSnare. We're a company that helps companies that have tens to thousands of locations with their local visibility. So, let's see, did we have somebody else jump in? No, okay. So we got a bunch to cover this week, and I think...
Hold up a minute.
Oh, I'm holding? What am I holding for, Sash?
He muted him. I think he was talking to himself.
Okay.
He does that now and again.
Okay, so let's start with I think the big news, which is we have Panda, a new Panda release, no penguin. We have pandas, no penguins. There may still be some pigeons, but we know we have pandas. So, what are we seeing out there, guys?
I'm not seeing anything personally. All the sites I worked on are good, and I don't have an issue right now. Thank goodness, because I choose my clients.
Oh yeah.
I haven't seen too much of an impact either. We dug in a little bit deeper today, but yeah, still not really seeing some of the signals that other people are.
So maybe this is a really good indication. I know, John, you're welcome to chime in here. I know that Pierre had said that it was going to be more favorable to small and medium-sized businesses. I can certainly confirm that across, we did a sampling across our multi-location clients, and we also did not see anything. So, John, would you say that it's fair that it's a, what kind of a tweak is it? Is it leaning towards weeding out the bad again here more, favoring the good? Which way does it lean?
Yeah, I mean, it always involves both sides. So I think we're trying to recognize high-quality content and treat it appropriately. And if one type of site goes up a little bit in ranking, the other type of site kind of goes down again. It's not that we're leaving places open when we demote sites or kind of putting 11 sites on the homepage instead of 10 because we think they're all good. So there's some amount of shuffling happening there. That's partially based on the feedback that we've been getting from webmasters, from users. So I think if I'm not hearing anything bad from you guys, that's probably a good sign. Probably also a good sign that you've been working on those sites and making sure that they're really the highest quality they can be. So I think that sounds good. And if we do hear feedback from you guys that there are specific type of sites that we're getting completely wrong or that we're not recognizing as well as we should, be it that they're low-quality sites showing up in search or that they're high-quality sites not showing up, then that's good feedback to have.
Okay, good. Excellent. John, are you able to comment and tell us if there is any kind of local qualifier in this Panda release, whereas the queries that are specific to a location, you and I had spoke about that a while back, and Matt Cutts and I had spoke about that a while back. Is there any geo qualifiers in here?
Not really, but I could imagine that you might see that within maybe competitive local areas where there are some sites that are really good that have been showing up in search or that haven't been showing up in search that might be more visible now, but it's not specifically designed to focus on local.
Okay. Well, because we know one of the signals of Panda is duplicate content, and so we had talked about duplicate not counting as heavily as a penalty when it has local intent. So again, I don't want to. If you don't want to get into that, that's fine, but I was wondering as part of this release.
I'd love to interject. I think that duplicate content is okay in a localized setting because you're going to have different things. So like, say you have REI, right? And even though REI is a national brand and they're an online retailer, they also have all their different stores. And so they can have all their locations. But then you have little tiny stores that, they might be only in 5 or 6 cities where they're selling the exact same content, or selling the exact same stuff. I mean, there's some different variations to having duplicate content where I think duplicate content is okay. I don't know. I'd love to get some of your guys' thoughts on that. I mean, I think when it comes to local stuff, that you can have duplicate content, and you're not going to be in trouble for that.
Yeah, unfortunately, Matt, it's been our experience. We had a client that had 258 different sites, and they came to us with exactly the same CMS, the exact same content across all 258. And even though they were serving those 258 specifically, so my analogy is Pizza Hut, even though we're not talking about Pizza Hut. when somebody does a query in Sarasota, Florida, if that brand has carefully curated that data or that content for that market, then it doesn't matter whether it's duplicated in Indianapolis, Indiana. But nonetheless, even when there was localized query identifiers, it was suffering. It wasn't getting penalized. It was suffering because of duplicate content. So if you deduplicate that content to some degree, it will perform better. So that's the question of whether or not this has some localization. But again, I don't want to harp too much on that.
So I think with duplicate content, there are a few aspects that kind of come into play, and I wouldn't primarily focus on like the Panda algorithm, the high-quality content algorithm there, but a lot of times when we see this kind of duplication across like city names, those kind of things, we see extremely thin content, and it's content that essentially just has a city name swapped out, and that's something that if you're doing that, you're essentially diluting the value of this content across all of those pages, and that's a large part of the effect that people see, that essentially instead of taking one piece of content that's really strong because it's really well-written content, maybe it's valid for a number of cities, but you don't have to copy that content onto separate pages, and if you kind of duplicate that across a large number of pages, you're essentially diluting the value of that. And that's, I think, a large part of the issues that people are seeing, that this content doesn't rank that well, but it's not because it's duplicate content per se, it's just that you've kind of diluted the value of your overall content more.
Sure. I think Don had a question. Don, do you want to pose? Well, actually, Don, hang on a second. Let's jump over to a different subject here, and Don, I'll get back to you here in a minute. So Matt Cutts kind of threw one across the bow here, came out of hiding, or I'm sorry, vacation, a little bit there. Not technically, so Josh, you haven't won the bet yet. And you know, talked about a bit of follow-up to the private blog networks, and I thought that was a fairly interesting thing. We've all seen some effects from that, so let's have a little conversation about the private blog networks and where we've seen that going.
I just posted that article actually up there and as well. So I actually, yeah, and you know, I was curious as well as what people's thoughts were about, you know, even sourced in that article was a manual action that was specific to thin content. So I thought that was an interesting one because that's, you know, telling, you know, that's speaking on-site to me rather than off-site. So that was a little bit surprising to me, especially to see it kind of sourced in the article, and then I know there was a large amount of comments at the end of it.
Yeah, as I understand it, there is a bunch of private blog networks, which are, for those who don't know, in my research I have found out that apparently those are spam blogs that people primarily use for linking. A bunch of those got de-indexed. And then the money sites, in ye olde black hat terminology, the sites that they all point to, they got thin content penalties. I don't know if it's because they were affiliate sites or just because they had thin content, but they all got thin content penalties. And any outlinks, they're all outlinking to, so anybody who might have bought links, it looks like maybe they bought links on this network of sites. As far as I understand it, they got partial match link penalties. So there's a whole bunch of different kinds of sites going on and a whole bunch of different kind of penalties going on.
Does it make you nervous at all that it's possible? Like, I mean, when I see thin content, I mean, what you're saying makes perfect sense that it's offsite resources that are causing that. But is it possible that Google could start getting down a manual action for on-site content on your site being crap?
Oh, as far as I understand, yes, definitely. I mean, that's what the thin content manual penalty is.
But I mean,
they detect thin content. I've usually seen it on clients who are affiliate clients. And they really, admittedly, didn't do much more than just copy some text from somewhere and put it on their site and try and make a sales page. And they got a thin content penalty. And so, although I'm a vocal critiquer of Google, I won't critique them in this case because I admit, yeah, it was thin content. I told the client to do something better.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to how thin is thin and how much value are you bringing with your summation, if there's even a summation there. I think a lot of these that seem to get hit, especially with these private blog networks, I've seen a significant amount of Plig, Scuttle, throwaway WordPress sites, which are really nothing more than, as Josh was kind of alluding to, they're really nothing more than backlink farms.
You know, as far as it goes, I'm just reminded a few years ago when British Television was demoing one of the new supercars, and they were going, well, if you have to ask what gas mileage is, you can't afford it. And this is just like how thin is thin. If you have to ask how thin is thin, then you know what, your content's borderline already, and you really want to be rethinking stuff. You know.
Well, I would generally agree with that, Sash. Outside of the fact that we used to run way back in the early 2000s, late 90s, we used to run a gaming site where we would go out, find out what the other blogs were talking about, and we would actually rewrite and talk about our take on that.
Yeah, guilty. I see that.
And you know what, our guys loved it, because we would go to all of the, we'd go do the work of seeing what else is out there, and we'd give correct attribution, but we would put our own spin on it and create that. It seems to me like that probably wouldn't fly anymore, even though it does in fact provide value.
I think it largely depends on how much editorial you are, rather than, say, just spinning content. If you are opinionating about a piece or a series of pieces, I think you'll probably be fine. Whereas if you just go, well, he over here says this, and he over there says this, and she says that, then no, of course not, because you're just regurgitating.
What we also see is a lot of sites essentially just rewriting content. They'll go to like the New York Times, and they'll take an article and they say, well, this is news, and I can report it on it as well. So they take this news article from one of these news sites and essentially just rewrite it manually, essentially spinning it manually. And that's essentially just spun content. It's just rewritten. You're not providing any value of your own. And if you do something like what you mentioned, where you kind of discuss the content that other people are providing, then that's very different. I mean, Barry does that a lot. He goes to the forums, he says, oh, people in the forums have said this, Google's blog have said this, and he adds his own spin to it. He asks for comments. There's a lively discussion there. That provides a lot of value in addition to just the copy content.
John, I'm curious, though, and since you open this up, I'll ask, would you not think that to an individual blogger that while it may not be as valuable to you, and therefore it should be allowed but not penalized, if I post something on marketingtechblog.com, but I want that exact same article to appear on social media today, the value is to each of those independent audiences. Those audiences do not cross over. So really, should that be a penalization if it serves both of those audiences, but you get to pick which one you show in search?
Yeah, I mean, duplicate content generally isn't something that we penalize a site for. For the most part, we see that as a technical issue that we have to solve in the search results, where if someone is searching for something that's essentially copied on both of these sites, then we have to recognize that state and just pick one of those sites and show them the search results. Usually we're pretty good at doing that. Sometimes we show both of them anyway. Sometimes they just have enough unique value of their own that it makes sense to show both of them in all cases. But in practice, that's not something where the web spam team would say, oh, they're copying the content, we're going to penalize them. They don't do any manual actions on duplicate content like that. The only type of duplicate content they take action on is if a site only provides duplicate content. If they're like scraping 10 other sites and they have no value of their own, essentially we're kind of losing resources by even crawling them. That's the kind of site they take manual action on.
Great clarification. And Josh, I want to just point out Josh's point in the chat, which is to use the canonical tag. But here's an interesting one for you, and Josh, you can comment on this. If you put the canonical tag on, like, say, my personal blog, but then I post that to LinkedIn's publishing network, LinkedIn embeds a canonical tag saying it's theirs. And because you can't get into their back end, you can't force them to not have it. So there would be a confusion in that.
Yeah. I mean, John, I think, has already answered this. And well, I use the metaphor, I use a UFC or a boxing metaphor. You don't ever want to leave it to the judges to decide, if possible. The judges, in this case Google, does a really good job deciding what should be a canonical. But if you can give them the hint as to what should be canonical in this case, or even a stronger hint like a 301, that would be better. So the judges usually do a pretty good job, but no offense, John, but if you want to take as much control as possible, and that's what we SEOs do, is try and take as much control as possible, make it easy for the search engines to know what should be canonical and what's not, and what the title should be and what it's not, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and that's a great point, Josh, and I think we could talk just briefly here. You know, for me personally, I don't get offended when Matt rails against Black Hat, because that actually assists me. If we have this part, I'm sorry, Matt Cutts. I'm sorry. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Everything Matt Storms says.
Different guy. I don't take offense to that Black Hat railing, because we're trying to do it right, and so so I don't have a problem with that.
Well, neither do I. It clears out the field and makes it easier for us.
Hello, Wassam.
Oh, nice. That's great.
One thing I love that is on duplicate content. When you look at like e-commerce sites, and like I look at motorcycle websites all the time because I like to buy motorcycle gear and apparel and gadgets and all kinds of motorcycle crap. And so the thing is that when I look at a motorcycle helmet, well, 15 different sites is going to carry the same thing. They're pulling the data from an API from the manufacturer. They're listing the exact same data that everyone else is. And because they're doing that, it's all the same content. So then it comes down to a point of, well, how do you differentiate? And I found that the site that does it the best, that is kicking butt across the entire industry of all the motorcycle stuff, is a company called Revzilla, and they're based out of Philadelphia. I would strongly encourage you to go check out their website and look how they're building out their pages. They're doing it on nothing but reviews. Hundreds of reviews for every product. That's how they do it, and it's awesome. And that's what I've been telling companies to do now for about the last year and a half, is that's where you got to go. That's where the money is. It's in those reviews.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay. So do we have any questions that have come up? Let's jump over to questions. Don has one. Shoot, Don.
I think that last conversation is a perfect segue into my question for John. John, a few weeks back, me and another fellow, I can't remember his exact name, we dove into redirects and canonicals. And there are many people out there that say that this subject is not complicated, but in my case studies, and I've done a lot, especially on the redirects, a lot on canonical too, but the redirects. So I have a question. When a redirect is, about a couple months ago, you suggested to me when the Google option wasn't there to change the site URL to the HTTPS version, you suggested a site-wide 301 because I don't like daisy chaining 301 redirects, and that would have created a whole ton of them. And I did take your advice, and I did do it. Well, the site sewered. It went through the floor and didn't show in the rankings until, coincidentally, this morning. But my question is, if you 301 redirect a URL that's tainted, because, okay, I found some tainted URLs because another thing you pointed out to me was a historic penguin hit. So I let some URLs go 404, and then when I did the site-wide 301 redirect, it 301 redirect those URLs too, and I have to think, I guess the question is this: when you do a 301 redirect, does Google remember that URL, and does it taint that URL? So if I went from Go ahead.
Okay, so let's let Sash take a shot at this here. Let's let John off the hook here and let Sash go ahead.
Who, me?
Yeah.
I was actually just reading a customer email. I wasn't really paying attention.
Let's take John off the hook and put Sash on the hook.
Yeah.
Fine, I don't mind.
I want John because I know he's got it. He knows exactly how these the 301 redirects work, and well, all redirects, and the differences between the redirects and the canonicals and their different effects. So I'm really interested in hearing that because I know a lot of cases, but nothing like John has. The knowledge that he has, I'm really anxious to know that.
Oh, so now my answer isn't good enough. Typical.
No, but I've been waiting so long. I've been waiting a long time.
Yeah, I just want to keep in mind that John is graciously joined us here, and we don't want to put him on the spot the entire time. So, John, if you want to answer that, go ahead.
It's hard to say, but theoretically, if you set up those redirects and you're moving from one site to another, then that's something that should get picked up fairly quickly, where I'd imagine you'd start seeing those changes within like a week, 2-3 weeks, something like that. If you're doing a site-wide redirect, or if you're like doing a partial redirect, not redirecting every URL, then sometimes that takes a little bit longer because we can't figure out like how to split up those signals. So usually it's a lot easier for us if everything just directly goes to a new domain, because we can say, oh, well, everything from this domain goes to the new one. Whereas if some of them stay, or if it splits up, which I've heard of before as well, that's something that means we have to think a little bit more about how we forward these individual signals. But I don't know what time frame you were looking at with those redirects there. Sometimes it's a matter of kind of fluctuations that always happen when you do a site move, and if it's like a week or two, then I'd say that's probably within the range of the normal. If it's been a couple of months, then that seems like maybe something went wrong.
Yeah, well, I think the main question is this: if I redirect a sour URL, right? So it's been totally hit by Penguin, for example. It's within the same site. This is all taking place within the same site, and I 301 redirect that to another URL. Within the same site? Within the same site.
Within the same, so you're not like redirecting your sour URL to a competitor. I mean, that's what we're...
No, this is all within the same site. I had it fixed, and then when I did the site-wide HTTPS 301 redirect, it obviously took the sour URLs that I had fixed and redirected them. So I want to know, if I redirect one sour URL to a new URL, does it sour that new URL? And if so, how long does Google remember that?
Why is the URL sour?
So because if it's hit by Penguin, it's sour. That's what I'm referring to,
okay,
right?
So we're talking inbound links, right?
Yeah. So I guess if there are bad inbound links to that URL and you're forwarding them, then those bad signals get forwarded as well. Yeah. But one thing to keep in mind is that Panda and Penguin are generally site-wide algorithms, so they're not going to like worry too much about individual URLs. Obviously, when the data is refreshed or when it's rerun, that's when those individual URLs will come into play again, where we'll look at the site overall. But in general, if you're just forwarding those from one site to another, we'll probably just take that whole Penguin or Panda status and forward that as well, if we think that it makes sense, if you're just like moving from one site to another.
Okay, let's move on here. Barry Schwartz had a great article here, and I think it poses an interesting question. At least it got me thinking again, because we waffle back and forth sometimes on different things, and that is, should we be sunsetting the nofollow attribute, the nofollow link attribute? It's funny, I just happened to be testing Elo, and I noticed that none of the links on Elo are nofollow, so that means that some of the nefarious sort of SEOs may inundate that with links because they are going to try and get backlinks from there. like none of them on any, like in the profile or in the comments.
What's the URL? Just share the URL. What was the URL there?
No, Josh, I'm gonna kick you here. No, you got to have an invite key, and you don't have an invite, so it's elo.co. What's that?
Look us up.
Because I only have 2 invites left. Maybe I'll raffle one.
Well, what is Elo? Can you explain what Elo even is? Because I've never heard of it.
Who built it?
It's a group that there's different stories going around. Many of you have heard that Facebook was not allowing pseudonym names for transgenders and so forth like that, and they got upset. I don't know that that has anything to do with it, but there's some people making that correlation. I would think that they had to be building this long before that happened. But anyway, Elo is basically a new social network. It's taking elements from Tumblr, allows animated GIFs, very big photography, pulling from Google Plus type features and Twitter type features. Doesn't support hashtags yet. It does support Markdown. It doesn't even have a good follow your friend feature yet. But it is interesting, and it's a new social network, and it's ELLO.co. That's the network. And so I was poking around in there, and I noticed that there was, getting back to the original point, I noticed that none of the links were no follow. So to Barry's point is Google really respecting this enough, the no-follow attribute, to make it worthwhile? I have friends who swear by the fact that they're no-following everything. I've got other friends who say, screw it, we're not no-following anything because everything that I'm doing is legit. So let's chat about that.
I find that interesting. Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
No, it's fine. I still use it. I definitely do. I have many situations professionally where it's important, I feel. Yeah.
Do you want to expound on that, Michael? Like, why do you feel that that's a value? Is it because you...
I think most directly the situation I see it most useful in is when I need to include something like, I have some pretty large clients. They're big corporate companies. They own a lot of different properties, and by own a lot of different properties, they have different URLs. Those URLs link to each other inherently, but Google's not necessarily smart enough to know that it's one company that owns everything and those links are okay. So we've got a lot of situations like that, whether it's a college connecting with their athletics department or a large property management companies connecting with a smaller one. Those are perfect situations to use no-follow links, and I've seen penalties flagged from not using them in those situations and penalties resolved from that implementation.
Okay.
The thing is,
example. Sorry, guys.
The thing is, right? And I mean, I'm all in favor of no follow, okay? But I think it really, for situations as Michael just described them, I think the addition of more. Well, the addition of rel equals me, yeah? So you can actually specify, look, this one's mine, that one's mine too, and that one over there is mine as well. Rather than just blanket no following the thing, at which point in time there's no context to the link at all. The adoption of rel equals me as a signal that these are all related, would to me make far more sense than blanket no following, and also I don't personally think that getting rid of the no follow attribute, I don't think that's really an option. I think people need to be educated about how to use it more.
Okay. All right, Josh, go.
Thanks, Kevin. I think this is a perfect example. I take a complete opposite view on this. I think this is a perfect example of the medium kind of messing up the message. I think we're moving into, and John can feel free to comment on this or not. I'm not putting John on the spot at all, but I think we're moving into an era where links are kind of a dinosaur, and we're going to have social shares. We're going to have brand mentions in straight text. We're going to have all different kinds of recommendation signals that the link is just one of, and it's almost kind of antiquated in a sense. even technologically, it can be antiquated. People could have JavaScript on clicks. They can have all different kinds of ways to move people from one page to another, or one app to another, or different kinds of things like that. So, is it necessary? I don't know. But I think we're moving into the sense where most people don't even know what it is, and we have all different kinds of recommendations that doesn't matter if it's a link or it's no followed or not.
Yeah, I mean, let's clarify this for some people, because there may be some watching that don't understand really what we're talking about or the context. So a no-follow attribute may be used. Some people, I'm talking about how people perceive it, not necessarily what's the right way. So some people may be using a no-follow attribute because they think that that's going to prevent Google from flowing PageRank. So in other words, why would I put a link on my blog post that is to my Twitter address and allow that to have a without putting the no-follow on there, because I don't want to bleed PageRank from my site to Twitter. They don't need the PageRank. A secondary use of that might be, I question the validity of this link, or I think that Google may think that I'm building links where I shouldn't be. Like, for example, you own 2 properties and you're cross-linking, and therefore you put a no-follow attribute on there because you don't want Google to think that you're trying to build, some authority where it doesn't belong. It could be in backlinks that have keyword anchor text, keyword-rich anchor text, like, for example, at the bottom of a footer, like back to your website or something. Guys, what am I missing here? What other methods might people use no-follow for?
Ads.
Ads?
Blog comments.
Like you want to.
I think especially with ads, that's something where I'm almost hesitant to say that if we didn't have the no-follow, then people could just be buying ads from all of these sites and essentially be kind of improving their popularity that way, essentially buying their rankings. And that's something that I think makes sense to kind of at least provide a way for people to legitimately advertise a website, because maybe they have something great they want to offer, but to do that in a way that it doesn't negatively affect the search results. Blog comments, those kind of things is something where I also see no-follow as being really useful, because you want to let people comment on your site, you want to let them talk about the content, you want to let them link to their own content, but at the same time you don't want to guarantee that their links are always going to be great. So that's something where you kind of let people link naturally, but you don't have to worry about having to vet every individual link there.
Mm-hmm. And I guess I think the frustrating part from a search engine optimizer's standpoint, or just let's even say a layperson's standpoint, they kind of feel like Google should be able to figure that out, because putting the onus on us is problematic at best, as Josh had kind of alluded to, with people not even being aware of how to use them properly. I'll even admit that sometimes, we'll have, like, let's say we have a network of 50 sites and they're all owned by one company. Should I allow that? Should I be able to put a link and say that they're all part of the same network? Going to Sasha's point, if I could put a me in there to let Google know that I'm pointing to these because they're relevant, but shouldn't Google be able to figure this out rather than to force us to do that?
I think this Sasha's point.
One thing I'll say is that if I'm working with like a large site and they're doing something where they're linking back to, like, say I'm working with a site, a product site, e-commerce site, and they're linking back to 3M, for example. 3M's a very, very large, antiquated, old website. I would dare someone here to go and do SEO for them. They probably want to jump off a bridge, but because it's that bad. But the thing is why would I want to link to a large corporation? Okay, those corporations, those sites already have enough value to them. They've already been there for that long of a time. So I kind of am at the point now where I say, why would I bother to even link into those sites? Why not just do a no-follow? Why do I have to link to 3M? Or why would I bother to link, if I'm writing an article about the White House, why would I want to link to the White House? I don't have to do that. Those sites already have the credibility They don't need one more link from me.
Well, I mean, I would argue for user experience. You know,
Let's let Michael get in.
I
Go ahead.
I'd argue for, I mean, maybe in the White House example, maybe not, but I would say for user experience reasons. I mean, there's a reason for the White House to link to certain pages and for certain pages to link back to the White House.
Well, like understanding, yeah, user experience, a link is there, but does it have to be followed or can it be no followed?
No, that's fine with me. I guess we're agreeing then. You know, I mean, ultimately, I don't care about the link signal, but I do care about people's experience on my website and getting to things that my large corporation might own.
And that I agree. That's not even a question.
And again, I think.
Go
ahead.
On
Go ahead, Don.
the subject of ads, one thing I've seen too, and I have to, whoever, I think it was you actually, Kevin, that said that should the onus fall on us? But I've had many, for example, in a newspaper, online newspaper, and they got the ad and everything is fine, and it's not up to me to go and chase after them to no follow my ad. If their system isn't set up for no follow, whatever, it is what it is. But I've seen other cases where they go ahead and they get a new webmaster or something, somebody comes along and changes either the CMS or adds a plugin, a translation plugin is the worst. So they put this translation plugin in, and I end up with 2,000 links from the same site, all do follow. And before you know it, bam, manual review. I saw it on 3 sites, all advertising on the same.
Yeah, and again, I want to point out something that William said in the chat, which is kind of the direction I'm going towards, which is, you know, my thing is we need to, and this actually plays into Don's point as well a little bit, is you know, I'd love to see this be simpler for the people we're building sites for, because I can ask them all day long to put no follow attribute in, but depending on their CMS and their knowledge, they're not doing that, and I hate to see people, you know, goofing that up.
I want to hear what Ollie has to think about this. You've been sitting quiet.
It was a really fun project, actually.
I'm sorry, John, did you have a comment on that?
Actually,
No, Ollie, what do you think about no follow?
I mean, I can't really comment on that problem. I agree with you know, everything you guys are saying. My question's somewhat related. It's about the low quality links, and we talked about our client's website last week, IPCPAC, and you guys kind of took an approach and said the on-site there's some issues which we're handling next week. But back to using the disavow tool, I got some advice from you guys to manually approach these sites, but I feel it's somewhat unrealistic. Either there's no webmaster, they're just like, I mean, I could show you some examples I just found today from 2013. They're just, you know, free blog setup with one BS article and a few links. So how do I even go about getting rid of these? It would just be through the tool, right?
I think Wassam's probably got the best lead on that.
Who, me?
Yeah, you've done some disavow stuff.
Yeah, but don't throw me on the bus. I'm kidding.
Okay, so real quick, we're going to pass this off to Wassam, but I do think that keep in mind that part of what we were talking about there, Ali, is that we want you to attempt and then make notation of what you can't, because you've at least made the attempt at it. So Wassam, you want to go ahead and take that, and then maybe Josh wants to weigh in quickly.
I think, Kevin, you mentioned it right. That's the message that when I don't know what happened last week, but you had a menu penalty on your site, or you have bad links pointing to your site?
I don't have any notifications in Webmaster Tools. There's no manual actions to be taken. It's just when you look at the link backs, you could tell that some of them are just directories, low quality, things that probably are hurting the site more than helping.
Definitely. Yeah, I think. See, here we go. I mean, creating a big disavow file that includes all these, subdomains, with the whatever .wordpress, whatever .blogspot, whatever it is, just include them in a domain. Don't usually work by including the link, the URL. Just include domains or subdomains, and create that disavow file in a TXT file and upload it. And just wait for it to process.
Should I put any comments in there? You know, do you recommend?
The comments that actually you need to include is, I mean, the communication. I mean, if you have an Excel or not Excel, the spreadsheet, Google spreadsheets, that you can actually list all the links that you have and which one you contact them, what's the status of it, which one you removed, and what you actually included in the disavow file. Include all of them, but try to add more data about contacted and the status of each link, what you did, and that can show. I don't think you need it for manual action if you don't have a manual action, but you can add a comment if you want.
Let's. John just answered this in the chat. John, do you want to repeat that for the efficacy of those who are listening?
Okay, so I think first off you need to differentiate between if there's a manual action or not. And if there's no manual action there, then you can essentially just clean this up with a big disavow file. If there is a manual action, then the WebStorm team wants to see significant steps taken to actually clean those links out. But I think in your case, there's probably no manual action, right?
Yeah, there's no manual actions in Webmaster tools.
Yeah, so I just create a big disavow file, use a domain entry as much as possible for subdomains like from WordPress or Blogger or wherever, and you don't need to put any comments in there. Those files are processed automatically, so nobody's going to read those comments. But if you need comments for yourself to kind of keep up with what you're doing, then that's fine. But you don't need to put any comments.
That will definitely save some time.
Yeah, that's a great clarification, John. Thank you for making that.
And
save people some time.
Since we're kind of working on the Penguin update as well, if you haven't started on this, I just get moving as quickly as possible so that you have everything set up, so that we can already recrawl some of those links and kind of drop them out, so that when the next update comes along, you'll already be ready. You won't be stuck in this half state where you've done half the work and it's not really recognized properly. So
you could do it in pieces, right? Like I could do 10 this week and then maybe find 20 more.
Sure. Yeah. Especially if you have a ton of these bad links, just work as quickly as you can.
There's not that many, but for the ones like a directory that's, you know, let's say m.biz.com/ and there's like 100 links from that domain, I would just disavow the domain itself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Disavow. You're not taking out the scalpel. You're taking out the axe.
The flamethrower, totally.
Chainsaw. You're going to town.
Hey, John, has there been a reverse in Google's policy regarding Penguin? Because Matt Cutts has mentioned in the past that they don't want to just use the disavow file for Penguin. They want actual spammers to have to go delete some links to be able to get out of Penguin. So, I'm confused. Can you just use the disavow file?
It should just be for manual actions, actually, that we kind of expect people to remove those links. Of course, if you remove them completely, then you don't have to worry about them at all. Other search engines don't have to worry about them. You don't have to worry about sites that are copying that directory that you don't want those links from. So removing them completely is always kind of on the extra safe side. But from an algorithmic point of view, we process that out automatically. So if you can clean it up like that, that's something that makes sense. You just need to keep in mind we have to recrawl those links. So it's not something that happens from one day to the next. It's essentially a process over, I'd say, a couple of months where we kind of recrawl everything, kind of turn them internally into something like a nofollow, and kind of move on from there.
That's welcome news, John. Thank you.
Yeah.
I know it'll help a lot of webmasters and people concerned about negative SEO. Whether or not it exists, it will at least allay a lot of fears.
Yeah, that's
I'm
really
failing to see how this is news. This has been a constant ever since, I don't know, how long? How long has it been, John? A while.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that this is really...
Guys. It's been great joining you. Have fun without me afterwards. I hope it doesn't turn too bad. But it's always interesting to join in with you guys. So
well, John, we really appreciate you joining us, because I think you can see here that you've got a lot of experienced people who do still have questions, and so we would love to partner with you guys and make it more clear. So thank you for joining.
Sure.
Yeah.
Great
Thanks,
to be
John.
here.
So guys, I do think that
Thanks,
this.
John. Good night.
I do think that this does highlight, and which is what is so nice about having these help desk hangouts, is you know, we have 10 minutes left here, and we can discuss a few other things, or if anybody has questions, please put them in the comments. But you know, I think it does highlight that despite what we try to piece together, it would be great to have a better relationship with Google so that we would get these clarifications, because you know, there's a lot of people doing some extra work that they don't need to do, apparently, and so this is some welcome news to know that they don't have to do that anymore. So what other questions do we have, or subjects? Anybody else have a question? And now that John is gone, we can't just go after him.
I've got a subject in a second. I'll open up for the questions first.
I was wondering what you guys thought of the 2014 search metrics ranking factors. I was just curious to hear what these veteran SEOs and seasoned SEOs thought about their correlation study there.
To be honest, I didn't read it and spend time even opening it.
I've got it open, but I haven't read it yet. I literally have it in one of my tabs. I have not read it yet. So
You guys want to drop it in, because I closed it, but no, I haven't read it either. So
Okay, well, maybe we can discuss that next week.
yeah, maybe we can. And I'm sure that we'll talk about it. Both Matt and I will be at SMX East next week, and but
Wasam's going to be the host next week.
Yes, who's going to be?
Wasam.
Wasam, awesome. There you go.
The Night Rider.
Probably be in New Mexico next week. I'm not sure yet. Okay.
Awesome. So, Sasha, do you have a question then?
No, I don't have a question. I have kind of a
Subject.
I want to touch on the topic of negative SEO. Okay. Now, first of all, you can have, I mean, polls on negative SEO. They're like polls on climate change. You know, I don't give a crap what anybody says. It doesn't change the facts. Okay. The simple fact is that, I mean, I'm in the business of disaster recovery. Okay. I have helped all sorts of companies, major corporations to little backroom operators, dig themselves out. I've seen attempts at negative SEO. I've had attempts at negative SEO done to me, right? And I've seen an awful lot of people shout about the topic. Yet every single time I turn around and say, okay, you've got proof of negative SEO, bring it. Show me the proof. Yeah? It either goes very quiet, or they go, well, my client doesn't want, you know, to bring said proof forward. Yeah, I have yet to see a single instance where negative SEO has worked without there being serious fault on the victim, and even there it's debatable.
I wonder if we could do negative SEO towards Helpdesk Hangouts and see what would happen.
That'd be nice.
Yeah,
I mean, look, I've had a couple of my properties, they've been hit. Yeah, and same with a bunch of other TCs as well. In fact, a couple of them have really documented it very, very well. No, nothing. You know?
Yeah, I think in the past, Sash, I've seen, you know, we're thinking of negative SEO as in driving down or tanking or getting a site penalized, and that's one side of it. I think another side of it is the astroturfing, the sock puppeting, and where you actually you usurp a person's actual quality result with something that's drove up temporarily, which I have seen done myself many times, where somebody goes and they use something like bookmarking daemon, and they you know, put a ton of bookmarks out there that use your you know, your keywords and so forth like that, and drive you down off of the SERPs. So I don't think it's just as clear as is this impacting, or are there things that people can do to drive down or get you penalized. There's also other things that happen as well. in addition to that.
Well, let's break it down. Then. Let's break it down. So there are various kinds of negative SEO that I have personally seen. One of which I could probably provide proof to you if you really want, Sash. That a friend
I
of mine,
would welcome seeing it. Okay.
Yeah. No, I hear
I'm not saying. Oh no, it's beyond the realms of the possible. I'm just saying that nobody has yet showed me proof.
No, exactly. You're absolutely right. I mean, we SEOs have to take a scientific approach. There's theory, and then getting your ideas of what to test, and then you have to go and test it. So, but there's a couple areas that there's some good evidence, some good indication that there could be a problem. For example, John Mueller himself has mentioned that if you have a site, for example, that will respond 200 on any URL, you can spam it with thousands of links, with URL parameters, with buy Viagra and stuff like that. This can cause it to be greatly increase the number of URLs on the site, as far as Google is concerned, because all these pages respond 200, and they're all different URLs, they're all different pages as far as Google is concerned. And this can give it a problem for Panda. He's more or less directly mentioned this in Hangouts. I've never personally tested that, so I can't have proof of it, but that sounds very plausible to me, and that's not the standard link-based negative SEO you hear about, right? Matt Cutts has specifically mentioned to me in private conversations that yes, you can use links to tank a site, but only if it's a site that had already previously engaged in black hat SEO. So if it's teetering right on the cliff for some spam-based link penalty, you can point a couple more links at it and knock it off the cliff. I'm not lying, he specifically mentioned that to me.
There's a little more to it. I mean, that's like an oversimplistic description, but yeah. It's in the right area of the woods.
Yeah.
Let me throw one.
And lastly, sorry, Kevin, lastly, there is a DDoS attack or a DOS attack that you can make against sites that will make it serve a 500 level error. I do have documented proof of this. I could probably share that if the author of the proof is willing to share it with you. He's going to be presenting it at a conference that I'm going to soon. Sorry?
How long for? Right. I mean, really, as far as you go, how long are you? I mean, okay, anybody can run a denial of service attack, but how long are you thinking that the 500 level error would have to persist before rankings are actually affected?
His testing found that you only have to do it for a day or two when Googlebot is crawling the site. It used to be, now to Google's credit, they've partially fixed this. It used to be that you could take the site down for like 3 weeks. Now it's the case that it just goes down for just a couple spots for a few days, but they can keep doing it every time Googlebot comes back.
Right.
So you can get
let's bring this back around because we got 3 minutes, guys. One other thing, this is a classic methodology is Joomla hack, where you show a user agent, you show Googlebot content that is not being shown to users, and it has a whole bunch of negative stuff to it, and that can absolutely tank a site, and I've seen that on many occasions. Although again, that's not your typical backlink negative SEO that people are associating. That is an actual physical, or it's an actual attack on somebody's system.
And just literally 2 seconds. I just want to say, I say all of this so that Google will clean it up. I don't think this is a good thing. I think this is a terrible thing, and Google should definitely be cleaning all this up and make it impossible for anyone to negative SEO anyone else. I think it's unethical, and there you go.
Okay, so hey,
you completely talk about negative SEO and ethics. His head's gonna explode. He's gonna vomit.
And I got to deal with him next week. Thank you for that. So, hey, actually, guys, we did cover a lot of ground today, and we had the benefit of having John in here, and so hopefully that can be a reoccurring thing. It's great to have somebody somebody that's representing Google actually hear us talk about things that we're not sure about. I mean, I think that that's beneficial to them if they look at it as such, that they could do a better job of telling us how we can serve them better, our masters and our demigods. And also, I think that we're doing a good job here of providing some information for people. So Next week, Wissam will be our guest host. That will be episode 110, and we'll look forward to seeing you there. I think we're going to wrap it up. Any final comments, Matt?
Have a safe flight for both of you.
I get
like the new
19 hours of travel time tomorrow. Who wants to trade with me? I'm going San Jose, LAX, Salt Lake to Atlanta, Atlanta to LaGuardia.
Why don't you just
I had a 2-hour flight and then an 8-hour drive yesterday. That was fun.
Real quick, what's one thing that you would want to find out an answer to, real quick, like short answer, one thing at a conference? Go.
Why isn't my website ranking number 1?
You're fired.
Is Elvis still alive? Is Elvis alive, and have you seen him lately?
Okay, that's 2.
How much optimization is over optimization?
Okay.
Oh, yeah. That's a.
Ali, Don?
What's the one best free tool out there for checking your website if you don't have Webmaster tools?
You got to have all of them. You got to have all of them. Don? Nothing?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
William?
How can I secure my entire company versus my website?
Okay. Wissam?
I don't have any.
Okay.
How can I protect myself from negative SEO?
Oh, my goodness. And with that, we're going to call it a day.
Believe in it.
Matt's pressing the button. Thank you for joining.